So today in college algebra, we're going to be doing solving right triangles. Okay. So we're going to show you the steps to solve for missing sides or missing angles in a right triangle. So here's our first one. So in this case, we're trying to find the missing side. This is the hypotenuse. Now, the good thing about doing these problems is that the problem itself tells you what you're supposed to use to find its missing piece. Okay, and it does this by telling you what pieces it has, what pieces you're trying to find. So based on our angle here, we are told that we have 3, which is an adjacent side to the angle 30, and we're looking for x, the hypotenuse side. So if we think of SOHCAHTOA, the only trig function that uses both adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So we put the cosine of 30, so the cosine of the angle is equal to the ratio of 3 over x. Okay, so now what we do is we're going to cross multiply. If you want to put a 1 underneath your cosine of 30, that's fine. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply across diagonally. So you have x times cosine of 30, and then you have 3 times 1. Okay. So what we're going to do next is you're going to divide both sides by the cosine of 30 so that you can get the x variable by itself. And then you solve for x. So you should get 3.46. Now, it's really important in these problems that you actually use your calculator and try it out. Because if you're not getting that answer, then there's something wrong. Now, one of the first things you could be doing wrong is if you have a calculator and it's on the wrong mode. So if you go to your calculator or your Calculator 84 app on your iPad, you hit mode, which is the button right next to the second, the blue button on the top left corner. And you go down, you see a couple of spots, you see radian and degrees. You should be on degrees for right now. We're going to get radians in another day. Okay, so but right now you should be on degrees in order to make these problems go correctly. Okay. All right, now one of the things about these also is when you're doing these for practice or for the test or the formative or whatever, all right, what you should have down. So the first thing you should have down is the setup of the problem, which is the very first thing we wrote down up there, which is the cosine of 30 is equal to 3 over x. After that, I don't need to see the work. I just need to see the answer. Okay, I don't need to see the process you took to get there. I just need to see the setup of the problem and the answer of 3.46. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. Next one, again, we're looking for a missing side. All right, if we think of SOHCAHTOA, with the angle of 79, we have the adjacent side of 8. We have the opposite side of x. So the only function that uses both opposite and adjacent is the tangent function. So we're going to do the tangent of 79 is equal to the opposite of x over 8. Now this is the only thing I need to see when you're writing down your work. I don't need to see everything else. That's good enough. Okay. From here you can solve it. You don't have to write the work down if you don't want to. If you want to, go ahead and do it, but you don't have to. All right. So again, what we do is we can make a fraction out of the tangent of 79. We cross multiply. So we have 8 times the tangent of 79 equals x. Okay. So if you do the 8 times the tangent of 79 in your calculator, you should get 41.2. Again, please make sure you try this out. One of the big problems we have, and I can't help you about this really since we're not in class, all right, is students will do these problems and get the wrong answer and not realize what they're doing wrong. So make sure you're trying this out. And if you have questions on Monday, ask me, okay? All right, next, how to find a missing angle. So we've done 2 sides, now we're trying to find an angle. So given the angle is x, we are given, in SOHCAHTOA here, we're given the opposite side of 9 and the hypotenuse side of 15. So the only function that uses both opposite and hypotenuse is the sine function. The sine of x is equal to the ratio of 9 over 15. Okay. So with this, what you're going to do is you're going to do the inverse. So the inverse is a button on your calculator. If you have the Calculator 84 app, all right, I'll tell you where it is. It is the sine button, but you have to hit second sine first. So it'd be second sine. So the inverse sine of sine is just nothing. Okay, it's just x. So those cancel out. And then the inverse sine of 9 over 15 is what your answer is going to be. So you hit the inverse sine of 9 divided by 15. right? And you will get 36.9 degrees. Okay, again, make sure you try these problems out. Practice using your calculator. It is a skill that needs to be developed. You can't just be like, oh yeah, that's fine. All right, you got to try it out. All right, next, another missing angle. Again, if you think of SOHCAHTOA, we're given the opposite and the adjacent, which means you have to use the tangent function. So the tangent of x is equal to the opposite of 8 over 10. All right, again, we're going to use the inverse. So the inverse tangent, again, it's going to be the second button and then the tangent button. Right, the two tangents will go away. You'll be left with x. And then the inverse tangent of 8 over 10 will be 38.7. Same thing for these. I didn't mention the last problem, but all I need to see is the setup. The tangent of x is equal to 8 over 10. Right? And then if you're solving for the variable of x for the angle, then you do the inverse. All right. This is also a good point to point out the difficulties that students have on the test in doing this problem versus doing finding the ratio of tangent of x. If I just said find the ratio for tangent of x, it would be 8 over 10, and then you'd stop. I didn't ask you to find the angle. In this case, in this particular problem, I'm asking you to find the angle, so I want you to take the inverse and find out what the angle of x is. Okay, so there's a difference between those two problems. The setup looks the same, but how far you go is different. All right, let's try another one. So we have missing side. So we're given 43 as our angle. The x is the adjacent. The 21 is the hypotenuse. So thinking of our trig functions, we're going to use the cosine function. So cosine of 43 is equal to x over 21. Right? So you can make this two fractions, cross multiply. So 21 times the cosine of 43 is equal to x. So in your calculator, you do 21 times the cosine of 43. You'll get your answer of 15.4. All right, last one of these. So again, we're trying to find a missing angle. So if we have x, we have the adjacent side of 5 and the hypotenuse of 12. That means you're going to use the cosine. It's going to be 5 over 12 is your ratio. Do the inverse of cosine on both sides. So the cosines on the left side cancel out. So you get x. And the inverse cosine of 5 over 12 is 65.4. Again, I don't need to see that work that's in the middle line there. I need to see the setup of cosine of x equals 5 over 12 and then find the answer. It's really just a calculator problem after that. So treat it as such. All right. So the last thing for today is we can also do word problems with this. Now, we're going to show you more and more word problems as we go through because they are one of the big reasons why you have right triangle trig. So here we go. Here's our first example. The mouse looks up and sees an eagle in a tree. The mouse is 20 yards from the tree and the eagle is 10 yards above the ground. What is the angle that the mouse has to look up to see the eagle? Okay, so just like in first semester, it's really important that you draw a picture for this problem. That's going to be part of the standard that you're going to have in your summatives is drawing the picture. It's like the annotation part. Can you draw the picture correctly to set up the equation correctly? All right, and the second part will be, can you solve it after you do that? So you want to draw the picture. So we have our mouse. There's our mouse. Beautiful mouse. We have a tree that looks like broccoli. We have our soaring eagle. Oh, let's look at that again. That was so beautiful. It's flying down majestically. Okay, so then we have the eagle, sorry, the mouse is 20 yards from the tree, so that's 20. The eagle is 10 yards above the ground, so that's 10. We draw our triangle. So obviously there is a right angle there, and the angle that we're looking at, our reference angle, is between the mouse and the ground, how the mouse is looking up. So there, theta is our reference angle. So now, do you need to draw a anatomically correct mouse and a bird with feathers that you can distinguish? No. But you got to be able to draw the picture. Okay, this picture is an important piece of being able to set up the problem. Okay, so now, because we're getting the opposite and the adjacent side of the reference angle, that means we can only use one function to find this answer, and that is going to be the tangent function. All right, it's going to be the opposite is 10 over 20. So because we're trying to find an angle, we're going to use the inverse. So we do the inverse of tangent. Those two cancel. And the inverse of tangent is 10 over 20 is going to be 26.6. And that is going to be the answer. Now, before we go to the next slide, which I do want to show you, there is a piece of information in this next slide that's very important. And that is this. When we say the angle of elevation or the angle of depression, it means specific things. Okay? Imagine you are a person standing down at the corner where it says angle of elevation. That means you're looking up. You're looking straight out and then up. Okay? That's the angle of elevation. If you're thinking of the angle of depression, it's not the part that's on the far part of the triangle. It's if you're on a cliff on top of the blue bar and you're looking straight out and then down. There's the angle of depression. Okay? A lot of times students will make it when you're looking down and then down at the edge of the cliff. Well, that'd be dangerous. You don't want to do that. Okay? So this is a piece for later on. Angle of depression, angle of elevation. That's where they belong. All right? You don't need it for the problem we just did, but there will be problems, word problems that have the angle of depression or angle of elevation listed in the words. So it's important that you understand what each of those things mean. All right, with that, we are done. Try the practice and be ready for Monday. Thank you very much.